Could everybody please mute yourselves? Everybody good? Vendors off. Awesome. Okay, thank you everybody for coming and welcome to technically our first founders meeting via Zoom. We are here to talk about playing the game in real life and how we're applying this. My name is Jasmine Kallio, and my husband CJ and I are owners of WNN Properties. We are buy and hold out-of-state investors we create portfolios of passive real estate investments for ourselves and our clients so we can live the lives we want to live versus the lives of paycheck to paycheck. For this meeting, we wanted ourselves, Lloyd and Ron, we wanted to create this meeting for us to network and us to educate each other about there's many ways to create passive income and get ourselves out of the rat race, and how we've done it and how we've used this game to apply it to our real lives. And for that purpose, we're going to be using lessons we've learned from the game. And right, for this particular meeting, CJ will be using the no money down card and how he applied it in his life. So with that, please, CJ.
Okay. Thank you, Jasmine, for that share. I'm going to screen share my presentation right now. Okay, can you guys all see the slides? Yep, okay, great. Okay, so I'm CJ, for those of you who don't know me, which you all better know me by now. Anyway, tonight we'll be presenting a little bit on a topic that is near and dear to my heart. But before we dive into that, I'd like to share a little bit of our story, which for those of you who don't know, me and Jasmine have been playing cash flow for a little over 8 years now. We started because my oldest son, Cody, found this game through reading a Rich Dad book that I didn't know who he was or what he did prior to that. But he requested that we buy this game, and we thought it'd be cool to add to our board game collection. It was just another Monopoly game where we can have fun as a family, play some investing for fun and so forth. Little did I know that it was laying the foundation and groundwork that we needed to be where we're at today. Well, when we started playing this game back 8 years ago, I realized fairly quickly that playing with different people outside of my family was needed and a lot more fun for me to learn a lot more about this game. And as I started to network, we started to network and see if there are other casual players out there playing, we stumbled across Lloyd, who then invited us to Ron's game, the Founders game. Well, shortly after joining the Founders, we realized that, man, there's so much more to this game that we were missing. We didn't know the real rules, didn't know how to play, didn't know who was on our team. We didn't know how to even win. We were just playing to play. Well, as we started to get educated and apply a lot of the lessons that were learned through Ron's teachings into cash flow, we realized that there's strategies to this game. There's real tangible plans and course of actions we can apply depending on your circumstance and situation to get out of the rat race and get out of it sooner, if not more consistently. Well, after playing for, I don't know, a couple of years or so and learning these strategies, I mean, Jasmine and I were just like, well, why can't we apply this in real life? You know, what's holding us back? This strategy works in the game, so let's see if we can actually apply it in real life. And one of the cards I'm going to highlight today is the zero down, $50,000 cost home with $100 cash flow. Now, bear in mind, I think Robert put just enough information on these cards for us to be able to play the game. But if you're in any form of investing, you know there's a lot more to it than what's on the surface. So this card initially piqued my interest back in the day when I was starting, because I think it allowed me to fathom that I can invest with little to no money into a deal. And the reason why I bring that up is the main strategy that I focus in on and that I share and teach is the BRRRR strategy. And if you know what the BRRRR strategy is, this is definitely different than in person, but it's cool. Well, to break it down for you, it's an acronym and it stands for buy, rehab, rent, and refinance, repeat. It's a strategy. So like most of us who go into playing cash flow or who has played cash flow before or over and over again, we tend to go into the game with a certain mindset or plan, a course of action, knowing what profession we are, what our goals are, what our expenses, and how we're going to attain that freedom out of the rat race. Well, for me, this is that strategy that prompted me to look into real estate investing out of state, especially with that zero money in card. So buy is the first step of the BRRRR. It's the most important step. It requires due diligence. It requires you looking for properties that are either distressed or motivated sellers that need to exit for whatever reason. R is the rehab. Now, rehab typically stands for the fixing up of a property or bringing value through renovations. And it can also translate into rehabilitation of relationships. And the example I'm going to use later on in the presentation will highlight that. R stands for rent, which after you buy and you fix it up, your goal is to get top dollar rent for it so you can get the best return on your investment. R is for refinance. Robert likes to leverage, so do I. So if we can refinance and carry debt well, we are able to essentially pull out all of our money. And the last step is to repeat this process again. Okay, so for simple mathematical reasons, I like to use this as a primary example of what the numbers may look like in a perfect situation, the perfect storm. So like the card, I'd buy a $50,000 property. I'd put in about $20,000 in rehab, and my goal is to get it rented for $1,000. After I have it performing, rehabbed, and rented, I then seek out a mortgage to pull some debt on it so I can free up the capital I've infused in this property. So in this case, after putting $70,000 to $75,000 into the property and renting at $1,000, I then approach the bank. The bank now says that this property is worth $100,000, and they're willing to give me 75% LTV, loan to value, or a mortgage on the difference. That means they'll cut me a check for 75 grand. Well, 75 grand is more, if not the exact amount I've put into the deal. When they cut me that check, I have created 25% equity and I have no money in the deal. And I can take that same $75,000 and repeat the process all over again. Now the fun part. I'm going to dive into a real life example of the BRRRR. Now, this one is not particularly identical to the card, but the philosophy and the strategy remains the same. This was a duplex that I found on Facebook with a wholesaler. How many of you realize that cards that we pull have that opportunity to share or create the exchange of some sort for a deal that you may not want to do, or a deal that may be more beneficial for somebody else with a return on investment? Well, this particular person, for whatever reason, had the rights to purchase this contract or pulling of the card, but didn't want to do it and was marketing it as a wholesale deal. Now, initially off of my due diligence, his wholesale price for the property and his fee didn't make sense to me. We were off about 40 grand. So basically this person was looking to offload this opportunity at $100,000. My numbers after my due diligence and understanding the market and the trends and the potential ARV, which is also on our cards, I realized the best thing I could offer him was $60,000. Go figure, $40,000 gap. He was thinking I was crazy and said, heck no. So I let it go. I continued playing the game. About a month later, opportunity resurfaces for the same deal. It was almost like he pulled the card again, but instead it was discounted. And this time it was listed at $75,000. Well, being me and always thinking that there's an opportunity to be made at the right price, I reinstated my $60,000 cash offer. Strangely enough, he accepted, contingent on me closing in 3 days. So what did the 3 days do for me? It shortened the time frame I normally have to do my due diligence. It shortens the time frame I have to raise capital. It shortens the time of everything, and it speeds up the process. So it puts a lot of pressure. But at that price, it was hard for me to pass. So I accepted it. So we acquired this property at a discount. I bought it for $60,000. During the 3-day period, we had our contractor walk property, and it was tenant occupied. Both sides were occupied, and there was renters in place. Now, the downside to it was their conditions were very inhumane. Like, the previous owner did not care for or repair any of the major issues in these properties, in the 2 duplexes. Now, mind you, our market has winter and snow, and part of the issues with the property was that the window seals weren't sealing. So during the winter time, they had to buy portable heaters because the furnace was broken, the window seals were damaged, and they were allowing cold drafts through, and they had little kids. The piping was held together by duct tape. There was bare flooring. There was no carpet or tile in the bathroom. It was just like, I don't know, almost equivalent to homeless way of living, right? It was just poor, unhealthy conditions. Well, our initial thought was we would just do some minor repairs, salvage the relationship, rehab the relationship between new landlord and new tenant by addressing some of the issues. So our repair cost was about $12,000. So on one side, we were able to salvage the relationship by simply just asking them, what do you want us to do to fix it, in exchange for a bump in your rent? So they were currently paying $550 per side, which is well under market rent. Market rent was $650. So the one side we were able to salvage by just simply addressing the plumbing, the window seals, and fixing the furnace. Put very little money into that side, but they were just so grateful and thankful that someone was actually listening to their concerns that they agreed to a year-long lease and a $100 bump in their rent. That took care of side one. Side two, tenants just wanted to leave. They weren't sure of us. They didn't trust that we would actually take care of them. They were at the end of their lease, and we politely let them leave the property. Well, that gave us the opportunity to put a little bit more capital than expected to fully renovate the property, which we then were marketing it at $650 for rent. These are the before pictures. I couldn't get too much of it because of the tenant privacy, being that they were both occupied at the time, but you can get the gist by just these few pictures. The wood rot by the window trim allows draft in. The carpet, I mean, it's literally just carpet thrown over flooring. You see that the doorway has no real threshold and no tile around it. It's just plywood, subflooring. And you see the toys, their kids living there, and so forth. It was in really bad shape. Well, on the vacant side, we were able to fully gut it and turn it to a nice product, what we'd like to say is a good product, and be able to market it for top dollar rent. So we did carpet, we did paint, baseboard trim, laminate flooring, freshened up the kitchen, freshened up the bathroom, made it livable and to market standards, what we like to think. Well, the good news is we filled that side within a couple weeks, and we got $725 for it. So that's actually I don't know, 200 or $175 bump from what it was renting for at $550 with the previous tenant. And now the fun part, the real numbers. So our calculation was we had an ARV range of 100 to 120. After approaching the bank in the refinance phase, after we got both sides rented, the bank then sent out an appraiser and deemed that this property is now worth $115,000. Smack dab in the middle and the upper middle of what our expectations were. And we love ranges because we can't control certain aspects of it. And this part of the process, we don't have the control, but we have the information and knowledge to make a range that leaves us in our comfort zone. So whether it was 100 or 120 ARV or appraised value when the appraiser goes in, I was content with either or. Well, 75% loan to value by leveraging and pulling out a mortgage for that amount put it at $86,250. That was the amount the bank cut the check for. We had no money in the deal. So like I said, our initial rehab was $12,000, but we ended up putting in $8,000 more on the vacant side to get it to the condition it was. So we were actually at all-in rehab budget of $20,000. So $60K purchase, $20,000 rehab, $86,000 refinance, absolutely no money in the deal. 25% equity was created. Total gross rent equaled 1375, 650 on one side, 725 on the other. A profit, which is not common in this strategy, but we got a profit of $6,200, infinite returns. So like the card says, and this is my firm belief, it may have not played out the way that the game makes it simple looking. It still works. I have no money in the deal. I have infinite returns and I'm cash flowing. And to be honest, probably cash flowing more than $100. That's the end of our presentation. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, just
So
real quick. Oh, go ahead, Lloyd.
Take it easy.
no, I was gonna just ask about how about was closing costs and all that paid by the seller or paid by you guys, and was that within the budget of the purchase?
So the purchase price, we paid the closing costs, which was like $500 because it's a
Wow.
cash transaction. So it's very minimal. On the refinance side, it got carried over into the loan.
Gotcha.
But we paid nothing out of pocket on the refi side.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, just to catch anyone up that might be watching this video, can you go over the jargon, ARV and LTV?
Sure.
What does that mean?
Sure. So after repair value is the ARV. That's where we get comps, comparable market analysis, or recent solds in the area, which you would utilize either like a realtor. You could try to use Zillow. It's not as accurate as what realtors can produce, but your ARV is your number or your target appraised value after work is completed in like kind shape. So our rental side that was nicely turned, we used 2-1 units on a duplex that were turned exactly like that as our comps. And being that it's a duplex, it gets a little complex when running ARV for these because you have multiple units. But for the sake of a single family BRRRR, what you would do is you look for the value of recent properties sold in like kind condition to what you're trying to create through the rehab phase. That would be your ARV, your after repair value. And the LTV, loan to value, is a percentage that a bank is willing to give you off of the appraised value or the ARV.
Great. Also, the ARV, were you able to come up with the after repair value just through your own due diligence, or did you use your own appraiser? You said you used Zillow, but is there other ways that you came up with the ARV?
Yeah, so I had a range of 100 to 120. I used Zillow initially because I didn't have the time to get my team member in or a realtor to really get the valid comps I needed. So I personally used Zillow on this one, and I took a little bit more of a risk, but I also put in a $20,000 range. So the range was my buffer, whether I was accurate or not. Zillow had this property at $100,000. It actually appraised at more.
Okay. And you were able to calculate that based on what? How did you know that it was for you that you set an ARV of 100 to 120?
So the 120 was my better case scenario side because I knew I was going to create value through the rehab.
Got it. Okay. And so normally you do use a realtor to do comps for you of like kind properties?
Correct.
In the area?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I have another question in terms of the initial investment. You said that it was a price of $50,000 and $60,000 you bought the property for. Now, because you had 3 days to complete the sale, so where did the $60K come from?
That was money raised. Finding a partner of some sort that had capital lying around that was willing to exchange it for interest.
Aha. Okay. Now, was that partner found in the local area through real estate investors, or how did you find a partner like that?
Yeah. So this one was a partner that we partnered on previous deals that they lent in a form of a private money lender, and was a customer. So it was relationship based and continuing on that. Finding the win-win and what's in it for somebody else as well.
I love that. And And then of course, your exit strategy when you got the LTV, the loan to value, what happened with the partner that was invested into this property as well? Did he or she come along or is this their exit out of the deal once you refinance?
Great question. It's their exit. So for us, it's a short-term relationship. Usually a year is what we like to structure for this, because in theory, you can do this in 181 days. It doesn't always work that way, especially with the COVID season right now. Refinances are actually taking 60 to 90, if not longer, because they're less of a priority than purchases. Being interest rates are so low, there's a lot of people buying, so banks are flooded with purchase loans. Refinances take a seat on the back burner when there's purchase loans that come to the table first. So typically 181 days is your process, your seasoning period that you would need before you can actually exit the deal. We like to structure it for a year because we plan for the just in case something comes up or we get delayed through refinancing and we need to hold longer. So that's built into our agreement with our particular investor.
And was this example pre-COVID or post-COVID?
This was pre-COVID. And example currently is, well, this one took us a little over 7 months, if I'm not mistaken, right, Jazz? About 7 months. So that's a good buffer range between 181 days and pre-COVID would be 181 days or 6 months and a day to about 8 months would be your normal range to refinance out on a deal like this seamlessly, no hiccups. Currently, if you were to start at 181, you're probably refinancing at 9 to 10 months, if not 11. So you're pushing the threshold of a year.
Okay, and after, again, can you repeat, after you refied and you paid off the investor, he or she exited, the partner exited out, you now have your capital back to use for other properties. And so you're zero into the deal, infinite return. Where are you in terms of cash flow on this particular property once it's been refinanced?
So this particular property, when we refinanced it out, ran the numbers and took into account super conservative contingencies. So the difference between us and some other investors is we like to prepare for the worst, and prepare meaning we know it's inevitable, it's going to happen. We rather fund it up front. So we create our own, I guess you would say, expenses for the foreseeable issues that arise. So what I mean by that would be, we know properties like this go vacant. So we put away for vacancies. We know these are not fully brand new built properties. They're older properties. We've done work, yes, but we haven't done everything. So there will be deferred maintenance. And we know that there's CapEx expenditures involved when you hold a property for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. We prepare by naturally putting that away up front. And if I'm not mistaken, our cash flow off of this duplex, with us putting away 30% of contingencies, those extra vacancies, CapEx, and repairs on top of property management, insurance, taxes, mortgage, we were cash flowing about $380. If you take out the contingencies we put in, you're probably looking at a cash flow of $6 something, if not $700+. No money in.
Nice.
Yeah. Any other questions?
TJ, how long?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Trina. Go ahead.
How long ago was this deal done, and have you guys raised the rent since then, or still the same?
So this one, we actually had it, what was it, a little over a year ago. So one side went vacant again and then refilled, and we actually got it rented at $725 like the other side. So we are able to go in and do a little bit more work on that one side. We salvaged the relationship. So they just outgrew the unit. They had too many people in there. I think it was 4 kids and 2 adults in a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. It's kind of a tight space. So it was inevitable they'd leave. But it also gave us the opportunity to infuse a little bit more cash into it to then get from $650 to either $725 or $750. I don't know. It was at, if not above, the other side's rent because we renovated similar to that side. So now this property is probably making a lot more than what we initially made it off of this particular deal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was gonna say, how often are you still coming across these kind of deals on in this market, this current market, COVID and all that?
So the market right now, it's either well overpriced or way under and it doesn't last. And either way, if it's overpriced or under, it's been flying off the shelf because either an investor like me sees the value or somebody that wants to hedge the potential stock market crash is just willing to dump and buy overpay for something. So it's going really, really quick. What I have been noticing, at least with our market and the trend is if you can find a sweet spot, meaning if you're willing to take another one of those cash flow cards where you're $5,000 in, but you're still positive cash flow, meaning when you get to the refinance phase, you leave a little equity in, you're gonna get the bump when the market rebounds. Does that make sense? And your cash on cash return is a lot quicker than if you were to buy at market turnkey. So this is kind of a hedge strategy against turnkey, which in my opinion, your worst case scenario with the BRRRR strategy is if you do it properly, you will end up with your own turnkey, meaning 25% of the appraised value will be cash left in the deal, but that's what you would have spent anyway if you went out and bought it. The difference is we were able to buy the property, control the rehab, put the tenant in. Control seems to be my theme throughout the whole BRRRR strategy. And I like the fact I'm able to control and oversee aspects of it from beginning to end. It's why I like the BRRRR. But yeah, there's
Gotcha.
deals. There's deals.
Thank you. I will be right back.
I have a question in terms of building a team. So are you specifically in areas where you already have a team, and how did you build a team of like realtors? Obviously someone went in and did all the work and things like this.
So initially, it's probably the hardest. I wouldn't say the hardest, but it's a challenging step when you first get into a market. It's finding people you can trust, right? For us, what we particularly started with was finding other investors in this current market, and we networked with them. We picked their brains. We found a way to place value in their lives to be able to get something in return, information in return, so we can then translate it and now apply it to our team creation. In the beginning, a lot of what we did was just finding the expert, finding somebody who had what we wanted in our market, and finding an exchange that they needed or wanted or even paid them to get information so we can have a step up in the game. Knowing who's on my team is one of Robert's rules, and creating that team is the hard part because you don't know anybody in these areas and we're not from there. And you can Google search everybody you want, but at the end of the day, you don't know if they're the upstanding person that you want to work with, or they're a power player, or if they're going to rip you off or going to produce good results. You don't know. All we can do is gather enough information and take action. So for me, the first steps was meeting other investors in the market. And from there, I got implanted by referrals to realtors, to property managers, to contractors. And then I just began vetting them, seeing what type of people they are. In all honesty, if I were to look back, I really wish I created some of my teams utilizing the cash flow game, understanding how they think and how they play, and if they're in alignment to what I'm looking to do. And I don't know, Jazz, you can disagree with me or agree with me. I think we would have been able to filter out a lot of the bad apples early on just by seeing how they play the game and knowing what level they're at.
And did you, on this particular property, did you already have a team in place, or were there any pieces or parts of your team that you had to, start off brand new on this particular property? Like how much of your team, because my assumption is that you've never been to this property, right? Correct. Okay, so everybody who's doing all this work that we've seen, which is excellent work, you've never met any of these people in person? This is all through online, through long distance, or what? How many of those parts of your team that on this particular property you had to add brand new, or were they already on the team?
if I recall correctly, our property manager was already on our team. Our insurance provider was already on our team. Our contractor was already on our team. I believe this one, we tried a new wholesaler. So the person offloading was brand new. We've never done a deal with them before. And the realtor who walked it and gave us comps was somebody we interviewed, but never actually used yet. And then turned around to produce a couple other deals post this deal. But this was kind of the vetting step for me to see if they could produce tangible information that I could utilize and accurate. So 2 parts of this team were new. The rest I've had either at least a deal experience, if not more.
So could you just briefly go over who were the players in that made this deal work? Because obviously it was you and Jasmine on here in Hawaii, but then over there, who were the players that made this deal happen?
The biggest player I want to say that helped us lock up this deal was the wholesaler, because without that person pulling that card or this deal, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to even present an offer. So they were in the space where they were able to negotiate it to the right place where I could still close on it. Because again, I offered a $60K price up front when they were asking 100. We were just too far off. It was one of those deals that when we're playing, you're like, I can't do this, but you know what? You give me 30 grand for this deal and I'll take it. And in my position, well, 30 grand's too steep, my friend. I can't do it. At the end of the day, because he did that, me and Jasmine found out that this wholesaler was at the point of potentially losing capital he locked up to lock up the deal. So we found out his motivation, and he actually became very transparent with us, right, Jazz? He disclosed the original purchase price, and he was willing to walk away making no money. So we were spot on with our 60K offer price. And yeah, he just did not want to lose his $5,000 he put down because it was past inspection period. So he was the crucial player. The willingness to see that I'd rather not lose any money and make a deal happen than to have his pride hit him and take the deal down and lose money, or walk away from the deal and lose money. And we went on after this to do 4 or 5 other deals with this particular wholesaler, because
That wholesaler, yeah, that wholesaler too, sorry to interrupt you, babe. He, another important thing for him was that guy that he had the deal locked up from had other properties. So it was very important to him to make sure this one closed for him, so he could get the other properties later as well, not just losing his money. And he did come to us like a month later with the other properties. He was just way too high again.
Yeah. And in all honesty, we actually bought the duplex next door, which he was wholesaling as well. So we were able to get a twofer after this.
So this guy this guy wholesales for a living. He has no interest in rehabbing himself.
Correct.
He doesn't want to, in other words, he doesn't want to do the BRRRR. He just wants to sell to people who do.
Yes, he wants to raise the quick capital instantly. But in the critical role in my deal success, in my opinion, because he understands how to find those motivated sellers, something I'm not willing to do. It's not, in my eyes, it's not worth my time in return to the investment that I might get for doing 1,000 cold calls and 100 door knocking, and then filtering out of emotional roller coasters of sellers that saying this property is worth $1 million, but it's only worth 50,000. You know what I mean? So he was able to get to the sellers direct and find the motivated ones and then present it to me at a fair price.
So in other words, what you're saying is the wholesaler is a S quadrant business. He's actively, because once he lets go of the property, then he has to do it all over again. Where you guys are on the right side of the quadrant, on the I side, where you're looking to hold it, to acquire an asset that will pay you long term over and over again, right, for the cash flow.
Correct.
Yeah, that's to set the context for the different players, and that's why I'm saying, business is a team sport, and what we've heard you say in this call is that you're utilizing a team. So obviously the wholesaler, because a lot of people might be watching this video and asking, well, why doesn't the guy do it himself? It's because he doesn't want to. It's not his genius. It's not what he actually wants to do, as well as everybody else on the team. And that's kind of why I want you to identify that who else was on this team and what was their incentive to help you complete your goal in acquiring this property and doing the BRRRR. So, you know, we got the wholesaler. He actively does that. He knocks on the doors. He looks for these properties and then he wholesales it out to you. For him, it's his core competence. It's something that he knows how to do, and he knows that he has buyers that will take the properties off his hands. He doesn't want to fix the properties. He doesn't want to deal with the tenants. He just wants to find these deals, bird dog them out to people or whatever, and then find buyers for them as well. And then, you know, yeah, and you've had a good partnership with him because you've bought multiple properties. Who else was on the team to help with the rehab or, you know, appraisal, the insurance? Like, I mean, could you list who else was on the team?
Sure. Next would be my general contractor. He was one of the first persons to be able to walk property in my 3-day due diligence period, which is not a very long period of time, especially being in Hawaii and we're a 5-hour time difference. So it was a very fun, expedited process. But he was another key role because he got me the information I needed and the budget for the rehab and that I needed to know that it still made sense for my numbers. So I actually was running rehab between 20,000 to 25,000, but he came back at 12 because he had conversation with the tenants. These were only the issues they wanted fixed. We didn't need to address all of it. So his communication skills and willingness to ask the right questions to the tenants resulted in a lower rehab budget than I expected, which obviously gave me the green light to do it. Next would be the property manager. Property manager and my contractor both walked property because, again, the rehab phase doesn't necessarily mean I'm doing physical aesthetics. I was looking to rehabilitate relationships. My property manager is now going to represent me, being that I'm in Hawaii and I don't actually have boots on the ground, or I can't be boots on the ground. I need to leverage their skill set and time to represent me properly. Well, they went and did it and were able to get the communications rolling with the tenant and be able to have them communicate well so he could establish a comforting relationship with the tenant. This allowed us to, one, salvage the one side that was threatening to leave because of the inhumane situation, and two, allow the other side to leave peacefully without damaging our property or retaliating. So he was another key player in the game. Another player was my realtor, who was able to walk property and get a bird's eye or a realtor's eye view of what this thing could be worth. And he produced comps for me. I apologize. My son's in the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was there anybody else on the team?
I would say the last person on the team would probably be the mortgage company who was then handling my refinance. So the loan officer, or in this case, the VP of a bank. And he takes extremely.
And was this a local bank or is it?
It's a nationwide bank. So they do 48 out of the 50 states, if I'm not correct, Jazz.
And you've established a good relationship with this bank? Yes.
They've handled all of our refinances or purchases in the past, and they get flooded with referrals from my current clients or investors I work with.
Awesome. Okay, good.
CJ,
and obviously, go ahead, Dante.
Oh, CJ, for the bank that you refinance with, are they do they do the whole like traditional banking, or do they do it based on rental income?
They do traditional banking.
So they don't look at DTI and all that stuff.
They do. So this particular bank heavily leverages your income and your debt to income, your DTI. They still reference your W-2 jobs, which I failed to mention in the beginning. The BRRRR strategy is a great strategy while you're employed, because you need the consistency, the proof of income, the job history. That plays a massive role in your ability to refinance. So if you're working a good paying profession like a doctor or engineer or something like that, you know you're well qualified to carry larger debt than someone that might be a janitor, right? Just because your income and debt ratio may not work for a property like this. So they're traditional. They run everything, credit reports and everything.
So with that being said, CJ, because you guys no longer have traditional W-2
jobs. Is that correct? You guys are both out, right? Yeah. So have they changed because you guys have a relationship with them? You know, as far as what they look at?
Unfortunately, it doesn't. It makes us in a position to get more creative. It's a simpler way to solve a problem, but it's not the only way. So it really opened up our opportunity to see that there's other options out there than the traditional, which we like to leverage now.
So you're going more non-traditional now?
Actually scaling to commercial.
Okay, got it. And commercial bank, it banks more on the actual property and the income from the property, right? Versus your credit, obviously.
Commercial is more asset-based than it is the person purchasing it.
Is that why you did it? Because that was part of your long-term strategy, is eventually to move into commercial properties because of the fact that you didn't want to use or stay in a W-2 job?
Absolutely.
And use your income. Got it.
It actually
that makes sense now.
To even entertain commercial, because we were in such a small mindset thinking, we were limited to the 10 mortgages we could get, and that's all we could fathom at the time. And we realized as we became bigger and we were running out of mortgages, like we're still not at our goal to leave the rat race. I'm not covering my expenses with my cash flow investment like the game teaches. So what do I got to do? And it thrusted us into a position of being in a state where we could grow and be uncomfortable, and put us in another realm. And it's just elevated.
Another game.
Yeah, it's like the fast track. It's so different, but it's so.
You're in the fast track, absolutely. That's exactly it. Nice.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions, guys? No?
Sorry. Another question. Where did you guys learn? Did you guys like take a course or courses prior to this? How did you guys learn what to do and what steps to take? I don't think we ever talked about that. So
Sure. No, that's a good question. If I recall correctly, Jasmine, correct me if I'm wrong, but we started off with just networking on like Bigger Pockets and stuff, finding other investors. But the game was the reason why we started looking there, right? Because you can put money down and essentially make $100 down on certain types of small deals. And we started there. And yeah, Jazz, you want to elaborate on the other parts?
Sure. I think how we started was like most people, they started with everything free. And then of course we went to, we started paying for other people's educations. We did start off with Ron. He's a paid, he was being part of this group was something you had to put skin in the game. So we started putting some skin in the game on certain educations. But a lot of it was trial by error. We went and did and learned from there. Most of it was from there. And even if you do get education, you're still trial by fire and you still got to go out and just take action. And I think it worked out well, you know, for us personally. If we went back, I would have went and got ourselves a coach or a consultant of some sort to help us through going through the fire, like how we do now. That's one of the things that we do now is we help other people buy properties in the mainland so they don't have to go through what we had to go through, and actually get them to take action. We would have moved faster, I think, a lot faster, and scaled a lot faster and sooner if we had somebody on our side telling us yes or no, go, give us the confidence to move and take the massive actions. But instead, we stayed fairly small for a few years with fear.
Right. And I'd like to add to that, like how she said, Ron was one of our first paid guidance. And even that was a stretch for me and her to pay at the time, which now I look back like, geez, Ron, that was a very generous discount for the value he gave. Why? Because he held us accountable, right? It's so easy to be caught up in playing the game and just being content with, I can win in this game. And it's, oh man, I'm repeating it over and over. but eventually somebody's got to push you out of that and you get onto the field and actually play. Like I got tired of being a spectator and I was like, you know what, let's just apply this. And it took someone like Ron to have to nudge me in a loving, kind way to get me on the field and actually applying what I learned in the game. Because a lot of what we learn in cash flow game, whether you believe it or not, is truly applicable in real life. You just got to tweak it a little, and it's just your preference and figuring out what works for you. But someone like Ron or like Jazz said, a coach or a mentor, their job is to make sure you don't back out. Right? I mean, CJ's.
Well, let me ask you this. I appreciate that, CJ, but a lot of people that might be listening to this and watching the video, or maybe even on this call, obviously fear is a big one, especially as us as facilitators. Just the game alone brings up a lot of fear. So is there something that you can tell us, you and Jasmine, if you have a story, what is like the biggest snafu, foobar, mistake, failure that you guys encountered that maybe would be a fear for somebody looking outside, looking into what you guys are doing? And then how were you able to overcome it? What were you guys able to do with it? And what did you learn from it? What was one of your biggest, or some of your biggest failures or mistakes?
You want to go first?
You want to go? Okay, I'll go. I think our biggest mistake that we made was not taking action. That was, to me, the work. We lost so much time thinking about doing something and worrying that we do it wrong. So we waited, and then I got more free education and learned more. And for like a year, I lost an entire year just not doing anything. And then we had to sit there for another year watching one property. When we finally decided to take real action and just go on full blast, then we could have got out of our jobs 5 years ago if we had just did it, you know? We moved so fast after that, after we started paying, after having skin in the game, after keeping ourselves accountable for what we said we were going to do. So much time passed if we had just did something.
Right.
That was a huge mistake.
And for me, my biggest mistake that I look back on and wish I could adjust would be to let down my ego and pride. So I came, and you know this, Ron, I came to that first game puffed up thinking I knew it all, right? That I had nothing I could learn from you. And this game, I've played it maybe 20, 30, 40 times with people, and I've won. And, you know, what can you teach me, right? That was my biggest mistake, was not being willing to learn, being a student, that I had to portray this macho, I know it all mentality, because I don't, and I still don't. And as much as I like to lead and guide people at this time, I completely transparent them. I don't know everything. You know, some parts we're going to learn together, but we're not going to quit. And that was my biggest lesson, was that I wish I was less resistant up front and more willing to absorb the valuable information. And then in turn, I think we would have sped up our process, like Jazz said.
Great, thank you for that. I think those are some key fundamental lessons that even the basic Rich Dad student or reader gets taught. Like action beats inaction, and you know, just, you know, you got to go out there and again, Robert said this, that the reason why most people aren't successful is they haven't failed fast enough, and it's the fear of failure and the fear of making a mistake that keeps people from actually doing stuff. I mean, just in our group on the crypto side, there was something that just happened 2 days ago where we got awarded, like the people who took action got a free like $2,500. And I posted it up on the messenger. Everybody should just be part of this and just try it. And I don't think anybody did. And so unfortunately, I was the only one that benefited from the reward. And it's just like, you know, it's still something that affects not only myself, I even see it in Robert. He still has his own fears. He still has, everybody, no matter how successful you are, no matter how much, needs that reminder to just go out there, do something, just do something, you know, start the ball rolling. And then as you start to do something, you will learn and you will make more connections. You'll understand better. You know, just watching what's happening and sitting at the sidelines. The reason why we don't let people do that in our games is because it's a huge disservice. So anybody that's on this call, you know, don't let this be the only thing that you do, which is, you know, just listen. You know, take that next step and do something. You know, pick up another book, talk to more people. You know, definitely give Jasmine and CJ a call if you have any questions on what to do next, you know, because that, I mean, this video should be a kick in the butt to not only just people on this call, but anybody who's paying attention to this video. And I highly suggest, CJ, this is an excellent call. You got to post it. You got to post it. You got to post it on either your pages and then post it on the founders page. The people need to hear your story and see what you guys have done, how you guys have grown, and the steps that it took, you know, because that, you know, it's perfect example of textbook Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, action beats inaction, and go do it. Because you guys, like what Jasmine said, I think is brilliant. Could have been out of the rat race 5 years earlier had you just, you know, taken that simple step. Yeah, and step out of yourself, because nobody's perfect. I mean, I've seen Robert Kiyosaki lose $1 million on a deal. You know, even he is not a perfect entrepreneur. He doesn't do everything perfect. He may, you know, talk like he knows a lot, and he does, but he still makes quite a few mistakes, and he still fails quite a bit, and he still has his misgivings. And you know, the one thing that I promote, not only in the founders, but I've noticed by being, you know, around Robert, is that business and investing is more personal development than it actually is business development. Because, you know, in a lot of ways, you get in the way of your own success. And so by dealing with all that stuff with you is, you know, one of the things that you learn by going through this process is you got to step out of yourself, get out of your own way, and just start making things happen. And regardless of whether your success or your failure, the only way you become a success is you go through that process. Does that make sense?
Right. I agree. Good call, I think.
Any last words?
Yes, we are at the hour mark, and we would like to honor everybody's time. So let's end the recording, and we can hopefully have a new speaker next month with and we can continue having these calls and being together and educating each other and one another and growing and learning and taking